Thanks everybody for coming. I'm Renee Grebe from Audubon Naturalist Society, and we're going to be talking today about healthier communities through healthier waterways. At ANS, we look to inspire residents of the greater Washington, D.C. area to really appreciate, understand, and protect our natural environment through outdoor experiences, education, advocacy. And while we couldn't do this walk in person for those outdoor experiences, we're hoping to bring some of that to you today through videos and our speakers here. So let's dive into the presentation. All right, so we're gonna be doing a virtual walk and talk of an area in Fairfax County in the Alexandria section, just south of the Beltway. Before we dive in there too fast, I want to introduce the sponsors of this event. So I've already introduced myself. We also have Eliza Cava, Director of Conservation at Audubon Naturalist Society.
Hello, everyone.
We also have Sonia Brehe, the NOVA Advocacy Manager from the Coalition for Smarter Growth. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the Coalition for Smarter Growth. Sonia?
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. Sonia Brehe here. As Renee said, I'm the Northern Virginia Advocacy Manager for the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We work to promote walkable, bikeable, mixed-use communities that are accessible to transit. And we're really excited to highlight what's going on down in the Richmond Highway corridor and hear from these great panelists tonight.
Fantastic. And we've also been working with Louis Ackerman from United Community. It doesn't look like he's on yet, but we'd be happy to introduce him when he does join. So we'll just do a little bit of housekeeping first before we dive into the presentation. So thank you first for being here tonight and taking your time this evening. I want to also thank some special guests that have joined us tonight. I know some are on. I didn't look through the full attendee list, but we have Senator Sorvel on here, as well as staff from Supervisor Stork and Supervisor Lusk's offices, as well as Planning Commissioners Clark and Lagana from Mount Vernon and Lee districts, and also Mount Vernon School Member Karen Corbett Sanders. So thank you all for joining as well, and everybody else who is here too. We'll be recording this webinar tonight, so you'll be able to get a video a bit later. And you can look for a follow-up email with slides and the recording. I'll try to do one quickly to get the slides out to everybody so you don't feel like you have to take notes, but then the recording will follow up about a week later. And then we're gonna have time for Q&A at the end. So you should see the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. If you have questions anytime throughout the presentation, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. You'll be able to interact with that Q&A panel to upvote questions that you have and such. So go ahead and interact with that panel as you see fit. If you can't or you have problems, please put your comments in the chat box so we can address them. And then feel free to use that chat feature to exchange ideas and comments, introduce yourself. But again, put questions in the Q&A window if you don't mind. And also, we're going to have a series of videos streaming through the presentation throughout the presentation tonight. If we run into buffering issues or you can't hear anything, don't worry. We're going to have links to each of these videos on YouTube, so you'll be able to rewatch them. So I'll apologize up front if the buffering makes it a challenge to hear it. So tonight we have with us JoAnne Fiebe, who is the Program Manager for Community Revitalization in Fairfax County with the Department of Planning and Development. And she's currently working on heading up the work in the Embark Richmond Highway Urban Design Guidelines. So you're gonna hear a lot of the interesting things that are coming that way. And we also have Charles Smith, the Branch Chief of Fairfax County Stormwater Planning Division. He's got 27 years of experience in natural resource inventory planning and management, and his current work focuses on stream and natural area restoration. So thanks, JoAnne and Charles, for joining us tonight. So our agenda for tonight is two parts. Why are we here? What's a watershed, which I know many of you already know, and what's there today in the area that we're going to be talking about. And then the second part will be looking at eco-spines, which we'll have JoAnne walk us through, placemaking in these kinds of areas, and some innovations that we're looking at today and in the near future. And then we'll have time for Q&A. So we'll dive right into why are we here. So when we think about where our water comes from. It's really interesting. Water really is what life is on our planet. And the water cycle here on the left really demonstrates how our water is recycled in our world. The land and water and air are all connected. The trees and natural vegetation prevent erosion and trap and filter that water to make it cleaner. And really whatever's on the land is in the water. So you have to have your protected lands in order to have really clean water. And then the land drains into a given body of water. That's called a watershed. And Charles will go into that in a little bit more detail. So we ourselves are made up of 60% water, and whatever's in the water is in us. So when our watersheds are healthier, our drinking water is healthier, and our communities are healthier. When you think about where our water comes from today in urbanized areas, we have these two pictures, the impervious surface back in 1984 and the impervious surface in 2010. And I'll just flip back and forth between these two so you can see the difference in impervious surface. And you can see when we develop our land, like you can see up in the top right-hand corner, we have water runoff and stormwater issues. I don't know how many of you got big storms today, but here in Alexandria, we got almost 3 inches of rain in about an hour's time. It was really impressive. So it's a good day to have a stormwater talk. So besides water, what else gets washed into streams? All of the things on our land go into our water. So the salt we put down in the winter, the fertilizers on our lawns, the dog waste that maybe people forget to pick up, chemicals, trash. And what does that mean? When all this polluted runoff goes into our streams, where does it go? It goes into our water sources, our drinking water sources. It scours out some of our streams at extreme forces, like when we get these 3-inch rainstorms in an hour, and it can fell trees along the watershed. So how can smart growth redevelopment help? I'll hand it over to Sonia to explain what smart growth is.
Great, thanks, Renee. So well-designed, compact, mixed-use development that is walkable, bikeable, and linked to transit are key components to smart growth. The Embark Richmond Highway plan envisions just that, with bus rapid transit connecting the Huntington Metro Station to Fort Belvoir and improved bicycle and pedestrian connections throughout the corridor. Not only does this type of redevelopment help us meet the needs of our growing region with more housing near transit, it provides an opportunity to transform sprawling, impervious parking lots and shopping centers into something more sustainable and healthy. As these aging commercial corridors are redeveloped, they're built with updated stormwater controls, and in some cases adds management controls where there are currently none at all. Additionally, the Embark plan provides opportunities to create access to open space, parks, and trails that are currently lacking in the corridor, and will help reconnect communities to the outdoors. This encourages healthier lifestyles with more opportunities for outdoor recreation and exercise. And with this renewed access to nature, it can help to create new generations of environmental stewards. Okay, next, JoAnne.
Hi, so I hope that many of you are familiar with the Embark Richmond Highway plan, but it was a 2-year planning process to really think about the future of Richmond Highway and establish a new vision that focused on a lot of the elements that Sonia was speaking about. It was finished in 2018, so it utilized these smart growth principles to create a series of transit-oriented activity centers around these planned bus rapid transit stations. So this is a map of the Embark area from North Gateway up by the Interstate 495 and goes all the way down to Woodlawn and right at the edge of Fort Belvoir. So you can see each of these black dots represents a BRT station. And so the idea is how that there is a lot of energy and activity centers around these transit stations to concentrate that activity and to create these walkable environments. So these little lines around the stations are the new grids of streets that connect communities into the BRT stations. So sometimes we call this a sort of string of pearls. Next slide. And this is the Beacon Groveton Community Business Center, which is an example of one of those transit-oriented activity centers. We call them community business centers. But this is showing the current Beacon Mall on the left in that existing photo, and then how it will be transformed into a sort of, from an auto-dominated, mostly surface parking lot into a much more productive and healthy community by sort of breaking down this large, massive shopping center into a series of more walkable blocks, and sort of working with the existing street network, but augmenting it to create these communities. And then it allows for opportunities for open space and for bike facilities and better mixed-use developments. And by doing this, we are able to concentrate growth in our activity centers in order to minimize pressure on the surrounding communities and open space, which helps support a lot of these ideas that we're going to talk about with stormwater. Go to the next slide. And, you know, a good example of this, if you've all been to the Mosaic District at this point, is this is sort of similar idea that happened there, where they took a old movie theater and a large parking lot and sort of transformed that with new streets and a mix of uses with a lot of new residences. So it's a good parallel. This is just showing an example of the types of streets that we're hoping to create that are more walkable, bikeable, and bring buildings to the street edge to create that community experience. I'm good there.
Excellent. So what is a watershed? We'll hand it over to Charles.
Okay. Thank you, Renee. So as Renee mentioned before, a watershed is an area that drains pretty much to a certain point. So if you picture a bathtub, that's pretty much what a watershed looks like. It has a drain at the end or a flow point, and it's all the land area that drains to that point. So you can imagine whatever falls in that watershed determines often the condition, and of course what's built in that watershed determines the condition. So what's most important within the watershed is really what's been done with the land. In this case, if you have an undeveloped watershed, the thing to remember is that water can soak in. The vegetation, natural vegetation, can soak the water up, slow it down, recharge groundwater, and provides a clean, cold base flow to the streams. The water doesn't move quickly through that system. Plus, that water is available for the native vegetation and all the organisms that depend upon it. But as soon as you begin to develop the watershed, as little as 5% imperviousness can begin to alter the receiving streams, and the more developed the area, the less water that's conserved. It flushes off very quickly. It's hot, it's dirty, and it also can erode the streams. But then again, it's not available for the vegetation and the animals that need it. As Renee already mentioned, the pollutants that come with this runoff are pretty significant, and they increase with the types of land uses from residential to commercial, and that can have a big impact on the quality of the water. So the thing that's really important, and I think the ecospines concept is really building upon this, is buffers. Because what we do know is that buffers provide tremendous benefits. Not only they protect the banks of the stream, and they do prevent erosion, but they also capture the pollutants, the controlling of flooding. You know, traditionally floodplains are along lower gradient streams. Those are streams that are more in the bottomlands off the hillsides. And they usually have floodplains where that water can spread out and slow down. There's also a lot of wildlife habitat and the air quality and also quality of life benefits for humans. And I think restoring those buffers provides many restored benefits, which we can really gain from, especially in the district we're talking about. One real quick thing too is, if you're familiar, 35-foot buffers are the minimum buffers usually required for RPAs or resource protection areas near streams in Virginia. 100-foot buffers are preferred, but recent research has showed that buffers that are 55 meters or about 180 feet are actually the most useful buffers from a resource and ecosystem function perspective. So what is there today? Let's take a little look at Fairfax County. We are a pretty big county, 400 square miles, and a lot of people in it. We have a largely residential use. Now the Route 1 corridor has a lot of commercial use. It's very packed in. It's an older development. And remember, the older the development, the fewer the controls are there to really slow down and treat that stormwater. We do have an MS4 permit, which is a state and federal permit, which regulates activities The county has 18 elements in its MS4 permit. All of our stormwater work that's done by the county is funded through the Stormwater Service District, which is paid for by the taxpayers of Fairfax County. We have about 30 watersheds, 750 miles of perennial stream. We have about 1,600 miles of total stream. So that means we have a lot more intermittent or streams that don't flow regularly on that system that contribute significantly. And then you can see on the right there that quick listing of the infrastructure we've already got that basically moves that water around as part of the stormwater system. And then look where Little Hunting Creek is over on the east side of the county. Remember, this is also, it's a very interesting area because it's coastal plain. So if you look at the 395 running there on your screen, that's roughly the dividing line between the Piedmont, which is to the west, and the coastal plain to the east, which is a different physiographic province. It has different soils, different flow characteristics, different vegetation in many instances. So it's a very unique setting. Little Hunting Creek is pretty interesting too, because in the upper part of the watershed, it actually has some very steep slope areas up around the Beacon Hill Mall area, Paul Springs Branch, and parts of North Little Hunting Creek. And then in the lower portion of the watershed, you get into that classic coastal plains, very flat. That's the area more around Mount Vernon Plaza that we're talking a lot about today. So you can see that the statistics on the watershed in terms of the area it drains. And then it is very developed. So about 25% imperviousness on the land cover on average. And that's significant because a lot of runoff. And then those buffers are only about 25 feet wide. So that's also a significant issue, having very narrow buffers. And you can see that the vast majority of the streams in this region are fair to very poor because of that runoff primarily. So if you look through time, we're going to be talking kind of intensively about the area of Mount Vernon Plaza. And this is in 1937, this is Route 1. This is Fordson Road. They existed in 37. And you can see this is mostly farmland with some farm fields. There's where Little Hunting Creek is. And eventually Huntley Meadows will be right over here. So if you fast forward to 1953, there's actually an airfield along Fordson Road. And you can see that there's still a lot of farmland and some tree cover in this general area. Then you get to 1976, about 23 years later, and a lot's changed. Massive development between 1953 and 1976. The stream has now been channelized. You can see the concrete ditch that we see today has already been put in place from Fordson Road. And that's a significant change. So we lost our bed and bank stream. We went to a concrete ditch system. So this was in the era when stormwater was treated just to get rid of it. We basically wanted to get it off the land as quickly as possible. And then there's not a lot of change in between 1976 and 1997. You have mostly build out. You can see the townhouses here at Fordson next to Mount Vernon Plaza under construction. And then by 2009, we've reached the final build out for what we see today in terms of the land cover area. You can still see Little Hunting Creek snaking around through here and then coming out down on this lower portion around Route 1. And then today we'll be talking about this area right here. Little Hunting Creek comes across Fordson from Route 1. That's going to be a focal point for our discussions. And there's a close-up of that. So you can see the townhouse complex. Here, the Mount Vernon Plaza. You can see Mama's Kitchen, which we'll see in close-up in a little while. And this little tiny part right here, which is really the headwaters of Little Hunting Creek. And then there's where the kind of the creek flows down through this section of the concrete ditch. That's the area that's still got some native vegetation or natural vegetation in it. And then you can see here the infrastructure. So this is the sewer system, the sanitary sewer system. This is one of the only ponds in this drainage area. So it's taking the water from this townhouse complex and leading up to the stream. But you can kind of see the infrastructure is pretty intensive around the stream itself. And the last image I'm going to talk about right now is the resource protection area. So in Fairfax County, we do have, we are a Chesapeake Bay, we have Chesapeake Bay ordinance. So we have resource protection areas around all perennial streams. Those resource protection areas are 100 feet wide, or in a major floodplain, the limits of the floodplain itself, which could be much wider than 100 feet. And major floodplains are areas that have drainage of 360 acres or greater. So this is just a quick snapshot of showing that if this was not a developed area, you would not be able to build in these areas that are now hatched today. So development in the Route 1 corridor would look vastly different if the Chesapeake Bay Ordinance had existed back in the 50s to 70s when all this stuff happened. And I'd go back to Renee, I believe.
Thanks, Charles. So this is where our tour will start. So we looked at these maps already. As Charles mentioned, that green part there around 1 and 2 is where the stream is daylighted and has never been buried, but it's a very thin area. So we'll start at 1, we'll go down to 2 below that little road inlet, then we'll look at each side of the 100-foot buffer line. So these will be little short videos. I hope the sound will come through. And again, if the videos are choppy at all, don't worry, you'll be able to look at them afterwards on YouTube, and we'll send those links out. So in terms of number 1, this is looking up the stream. So this is where it is daylighted, but it's all a concrete swale. And you can see there in the foreground, that's where the storm water comes into these concrete swale areas, just like we saw all that stormwater infrastructure on the map previously. So the next few slides, we'll have some introductions from Charles and JoAnne.
So here we are in the headwaters of Little Hunting Creek, and you can see that we're between Route 1 and Fordson Road. Part of the stream is in a concrete ditch, which is a traditional method of getting stormwater away from built areas to protect infrastructure, buildings, roads. And then as it comes downstream, it's entering into an area that's stabilized with stone or riprap. But there are still trees growing on the side. There's actually a pair of ducks foraging in that piece. So you get some environmental benefit even out of a channel that's still stabilized with stone, but far from the concrete example here, which moves the water very quickly and moves the pollutants along too.
In this area, this could be a place where it could be some sort of a park that could be an asset to the community. And actually we see that it's actually being used like that. These chairs were set up in this little park area. It was shady in this little corner. There were water bottles there. So it would be great to see these areas developed as a kind of place that people could gather in a way that wasn't as haphazard as we saw here. And then we mentioned that we saw some ducks in the water. It was very impressive. Very small area.
So like right here?
Yeah.
So that's really for like this tree.
You can imagine this area being actually good habitat for these animals. Instead, it was a little bit more of a ditch that they were living in. And you could see how close everything was in terms of the urbanization. And yet there was still wildlife thriving here and living in this area.
So we come a little bit further downstream. There's a small stretch of the creek that's actually in a natural channel. It doesn't have rock stabilizing. It's got trees and vegetation. And it has a natural bottom with stones. And it's actually moving the stormwater just fine. The banks are not eroding out. It's providing a lot more environmental benefit. And I think it just shows to you that even in a highly urban area, you can still have a channel with natural banks that will not collapse and move the water along, and it's compatible with the built environment.
We'll hear from JoAnne here, talking more about how the development vision is for this area.
So one of the areas I'm standing here is a redevelopment site as part of the Embark comprehensive plan. This is one of our areas where we envision a mixed-use development that incorporates new streets and new mixed-use buildings, lots of new residential, and some bringing back the commercial uses. But as part of that redevelopment, we want to include these stream valleys that are already existing. We don't want to cover them up like we used to do back in old redevelopment days. So this is an example of where we might take this, what now is maybe 25 to 40 foot wide channel, and recapture some of the riparian areas that are planned into a new development that includes some new park spaces and enhanced features that make this a more sustainable stream valley.
We wanted to take a look at how big those RPA areas were compared to
So
where they are today. So if we're looking at the overhead shot, we had been standing up here for the first filming, and then just south here of the road inlet there. And so as we think about what a 100-foot buffer on each side looks like, this is about the measurement. So you can see where it would not be allowed to be developed today. And we'll see some videos from ground level about how far away that looks. And then just for context, I also put them in other places so you can see really how big of an area that is before the creek gets piped underground to go west across Fordson Road there. So this is a big area. And then as Charles talked about, that kind of 180-foot buffer that we saw on the earlier slide for good habitat, that's even further, that's right up to the roads. This just gives you a sense of scale. In Google Maps, measuring the distance of the crowns of the trees there, it's about 70 foot or so, a little bit more narrow at points. That's not the spread of the creek, obviously, but it's the spread of the crowns of the trees there.
we're standing 100 feet off of the stream bank right here at the edge of the RPA that would be planned.
And here's a video of them standing and showing how far away that 100-foot buffer really was. And thinking about it from the other side, from the parking lot side, we'll take a look from there as well. So we're here in between Fordson and Route 1, which we're looking at. And we have Charles, who has paced off the 100-foot marker of the resource protection area. So you can see that in today's development, it's a big impervious surface, and there where the trees are is the stream. So for our next part of the tour, we'll hop across the road and we'll look here as the stream comes out from the culvert under the road. And then we'll also look at some of the storm drains at the back of the Mount Vernon Plaza there at site number 6. So here, this is looking towards the townhomes. You can see that the stream comes out there from under the road. Fordson Road is at my back here. And you can see it's actually quite treed. In the summertime, you really couldn't tell that there's concrete swales on each side. It looked very vegetated, which was really beautiful. As you get closer and look right out where the culvert comes out, you can see the stream. And again, it's quite vegetated there, which is nice. And then here, we'll take a look at the back of the Mount Vernon Plaza and see where the water goes here from the storm drain. We are here behind the shopping plaza, and you can see that the edge of the building is about 70 feet from the edge of the concrete channel, which is all right here behind the tree line. So as we get down into the stream, we can see where those storm drains get dumped out into the stream. We are here behind the shop. You can see the flow is coming here, flowing west. Here where some of the drainage comes out from the shopping plaza. The flow of Little Hunting Creek at this point is going west and eventually circling back around to go towards the Potomac. And then we'll hop back up. You can see the flow is coming here, flowing west. There we go. Well, all right, we'll hop back up to road level here, and we'll take a look along the concrete swale down where we saw the inlet of the water come at 7 here with Charles. We'll do a quick talk there, and then we'll hop back up to road level and hear from JoAnne about the redevelopment opportunities.
So the trash here is really an indication of the height the water comes as it moves through this ditch. The road culverts are actually pretty high, and there's a lot of volume that comes off all this impervious surface from Route 1 and Fordson and all the buildings in between.
And we'll hop back up to road level now.
Trash here.
Oh, one more shot of what the concrete channel looks like here. There is vegetation growing up through the concrete to make it as green as possible. And then actually at road level here, it was really interesting. We saw a whole bunch of things happening here. We saw a pedestrian across the street who didn't have a sidewalk to walk on. We saw a car coming out of the road inlet there into the plaza on the eastern side. We saw a family coming down the sidewalk, but nobody had a crosswalk to get across either the driveway there behind the Mount Vernon Plaza, or for the gentleman across the way to get across to the Mount Vernon Plaza. The road is actually pretty wide at this point for a small road, a Fortson road, and the traffic really isn't calm here at all. People are coming off of Route 1, which is behind me in this picture, and they're coming pretty fast. And so without crosswalks in any regards here, it's hard for pedestrians to get around. And as we think about redevelopment, you know, the smart growth opportunities and the smart growth principles can really be applied here to make all of this safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and cars. And again, getting people out and using their community in a way that it isn't as easy to use today.
So this is the large Mount Vernon Plaza. It's planned for redevelopment as part of the Embark comprehensive plan. Many of these businesses could come back as part of the redevelopment, but it would also include things like new residential areas and park spaces. What you can see in these shots is that there's an ecological spine plan for one side of the development, and then this would largely be new buildings, multi-story buildings. And then over here where the McDonald's is, all the way out to the edge of Fortson Road, would be a large new park as part of the redevelopment.
Excellent. That's the end of our mini tour. And I'm going to hand it over to JoAnne to walk us through the eco-spines.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned in some of those videos, the ecological spines are really a byproduct of the planning work that was done as part of the Embark comprehensive plan. And it looked at some of these buried streams and pipes because they're so highly engineered and channelized. So this photo that you're seeing is of that same area that we're talking about behind Mount Vernon Plaza. That's planned to be one of these ecological spines. And I think really the genesis of this idea happened during Embark when community members asked this question, you know, wouldn't it be a great opportunity to create an amenity by enhancing this environmental feature and interact with it instead of turning our backs to it? You can go to the next slide. So just to define what we're talking about, because it's kind of a wonky term, Fairfax County has completed a lot of restoration projects around the county in Tysons, in McLean, and even a portion of Doe Creek near Hayfield and Telegraph Road. But ecological spines really take this idea a step further by combining stream improvements with a new community amenity. And so we hope this idea maybe starts on Richmond Highway, but can be used as inspiration elsewhere. So to define them, ecological spines are linear parks and enhanced riparian corridors where there are already existing streams. And they're formed by daylighting buried streams or enhancing existing open swales. They serve a range of environmental, recreational, and educational purposes while connecting people to nature. And so really the key to these is restoring a connected ecological system. You can go to the next slide. We looked at a lot of precedents as we were developing these concepts, and this is really a great inspiration to us. This is a project in Portland, Oregon, called the Headwaters at Tryon Creek. It was a stream. You can see in the left picture, there was a stream under this buried under this parking lot. And as part of the project, the developer daylighted it and incorporated into residential development, which you can see in the plan on the right. So right through the middle there, you see where they daylighted the stream and sort of, you know, controlled the development around that. And the project's goals were to reconnect the system as a riparian corridor, improve stormwater management, reduce impervious surface, and create this community amenity. it should be noted that the developer received some financial support from state and local agencies, and that's going to be important because many of these projects are really expensive, and it is going to end up being probably public-private partnerships that help get these accomplished. So next slide. So the photo on the right is actually that project. Now you can see it kind of in an aerial view. There are in the Embark concept plan, there are a range of different configurations of ecological spines. And I think we have 4 different types, and each one is based on looking at the existing conditions and looking at the future plan conditions of where buildings and open spaces and roads would be located. So this shows one of the more constrained scenarios. And I think what's important about this is, do you remember we were showing the images of the 100-foot offset buffer and the importance of that buffer? Well, what we're going to get in the reality of developing in these areas is that when you saw how wide that buffer was, it took up the entire block almost. There was really very little to develop. And so it's highly unrealistic to expect that 100-foot buffer. And in fact, the Chesapeake Bay opens the door to looking at how we can, where there is already development that has occurred, that you can continue to develop in those areas. So what we're looking at in this is how can we allow development to occur within that buffer, but also do it in a way that's restoring some ecological function. So this is an example of that sort of very constrained cross-section where of an ecological spine where it's still quite narrow, and buildings are pretty close to the waterway, but restoring those banks and creating those riparian corridors along them, you can restore some of that environmental function and sometimes some stormwater benefit as well. Next one.
I'm going to add on to what JoAnne said, is just this issue of this space in here. And JoAnne, can you actually go back? I'm sorry, Renee, go back to the last slide. The space that's shown between the buildings on the diagram on the left, if you can picture where the people are walking on the paths, that would represent the outer limits of the floodplain that would be recreated as part of this spine redevelopment. See, with the buildings themselves would have to sit out of the 100-year flow. So that's the design storm that you have to have buildings out of, and they have to actually have a certain elevation above the 100-year floodplain. So the channel itself would convey all your base flow of your stream up to probably something like a 10-year event within that normal, that bottom kind of parabolic shaped thing and within the pink box. And then anything above that would flood out. So your paths would actually be part of a floodplain. And so during higher flow events, those would be underwater and they would not be usable all the time. And that's an important thing because you have to give that flood an opportunity to spread out and slow down. And that gives this better flood control, and better cleaning of that water during those higher flow events.
Yeah, and then this shows an example of when you have the opportunity to gain some more space and it's a little less constrained, what can you do there? And as Charles was mentioning about the banks and the entire waterway area is much wider here and allows the water to spread out even further. And so it really just depends on the specific conditions of each ecological spine and understanding what can be achieved. But all of the amenities that go alongside with these having, and you can see that as an example in the photo of the right, not only are we restoring that floodplain function and these natural banks, but we're adding things like trails and opportunities for people to sort of connect with that waterway. The next one. And then this might be an example of a completely naturalized scenario. So an example of this might be up by Cameron Run, all the way up in North Gateway, where there's a pretty wide, Cameron Run is fairly wide, and looking at opportunities to sort of restore a lot of that natural bank along that edge. And so these would be much wider and restore a lot more floodplain function and have maybe much more naturalized experiences where there could be trails and things in there, but less programming, less intense, But looking at especially the waterway's edge and how to restore that natural edge. The next slide. And so these just show some examples of other ecological spine type examples around the country where they have created different experiences along these. So things like ways to get down and touch the water, and you know, we were looking out when we were walking by the Hybel Valley Shopping Center and in that space behind it, and there was children playing back there. But you know, you could imagine right now with the high banks and the concrete channels that, you know, parents would say stay away from that. Well, it would be really nice if kids could actually engage with the water. You know, maybe they bring their fishing nets and things like that. And so this is all about creating those amenities. Next slide. So, you know, we've done a lot of research work on how to implement these types of ecological spines, and we're going to continue to do that. We've developed a technical team of staff from everywhere from the planning side to stormwater experts, to landscape architects, to look at the different aspects of what's needed to design these. But as I mentioned earlier, the need for a public-private partnership and some financial or technical support, as the Portland example illustrates, is going to probably be needed as well. And then there's important practical questions about how to daylight and restore streams that might have upstream or downstream impacts outside the boundaries of the site. So when you have one developer developing a section of an ecological spine, well, what does that do for upstream and downstream impacts? And that's something that the county is going to also have to participate in better understanding. And then this just shows a map of a few of the other locations besides the one that we were talking about. So there, as when Charles was showing some of the other locations around the Little Hunting Creek where it comes off, you can see that in all three of these examples. But in addition to these, we look at portions of Doe Creek and portions of Cameron Run that have these same opportunities.
Okay. You know, and while we were out walking and taking some of these videos, Mama's Kitchen, that's right there on Fordson. Renee, yeah, that's great. Thank you. So this is right at where we were initially looking at the full 100 feet of the RPA, and the stream comes down and then goes down under Fordson. And right there is where Mama's Kitchen is. Thank you. Yeah, so what's amazing here is how, and what we want to talk a little bit about is placemaking, where, you know, you really are able to utilize the local community's assets to create a sense of place with gathering areas that you can highlight the history or the natural history of the area, and providing opportunities for that passive recreation that JoAnne was sharing. That basically helps to promote well-being and an interest for the people who live and work and play in this area. And so in this case, next slide, thank you. Yeah, so the owners of this plaza utilized an undevelopable part of the property that's right next to the stream and created this gorgeous garden, growing fruits and vegetables that they use in the restaurant, and providing a beautiful outdoor seating area just steps from the hustle and bustle of the Richmond Highway. You wouldn't even know you were near the highway when you were in there. It was really quite remarkable. And we were just amazed by what you can create when you start thinking about, well, how can we create a sense of place here? And placemaking really is an integral part of the Embark plan, with its ecological spines, its livability spines, and the stormwater facilities that intentionally plan for public spaces and to create that sense of place in the communities along the corridor. So yeah, I mean, this is just such a neat space that the gentleman Constantine that came out because he saw us filming there, and he was so excited to share what he's created there. And it's just, it's lovely.
I'll highlight that this is where the stream actually is piped underground here, which is why it's not buildable. So they made a green space out of where the stream might have been, but it's been piped. And so because they can't build any permanent structures there, they made it into a really wonderful garden area. So I'll hand it over to Charles for talking about what our innovations are that we can explore today.
So some of the things we're trying to do in the interim in this space, and I'll say one thing, the county really tries to work, and we're working closely with the Department of Planning and Development, JoAnne's group, and others to help plan the Richmond corridor improvements. But in the interim, since we don't have control of much of the land, we're trying to do some things to help the corridor. So this Bandalong trash collector is one effort, and we've had this in place now since May. They exist in DC and also in Arlington County, so they're not new to the region, but it's a unique way to try to find a way to control trash. So it's located right here at the end of the concrete ditch that flows off of Fordson behind the area with the Home Depot. And there's just a picture of the end of the concrete ditch, and then it's anchored up on the banks.
This is further along down Little Hunting Creek behind the Home Depot.
And then you can see here.
I'll let this one play first. So 2 quick videos back to back here.
So this is further along down Little Hunting Creek behind the home.
Sorry, they're somehow getting out of order. One moment here.
So this is further along down Little Hunting Creek behind the Home Depot along Route 1, where a new Bandalong trash collection system is here to try to minimize the trash pollution going into the Potomac River and downstream of Little Hunting Creek. So this is further along down Little Hunting. This is just downstream of the Bandalong on Little Hunting Creek. And you can see how much less trash we have here. And you can see the Bandalong is right here.
Great.
This is just downstream of the Bandalong on Little Hunting Creek. And you can see how much.
So the Bandalong is a unique opportunity to try to capture trash. I will throw in here right now, the Bandalong is not the end all and the be all. It's kind of it is a good effort, but you've got folks like the Friends of Little Hunting Creek and the volunteers who have put in probably thousands of hours over the years, pulling out incredible quantities of trash from that stream. And so we're trying to reduce that load, but certainly as has been the efforts of many people over many years have done a lot. We have a lot to do with behavioral changes that will really help in terms of the trash issues also. One of the other efforts we've been undertaking in the last year is Operation Stream Shield. So this is an effort to try to take folks who are underemployed and help them. We'll do 2 things: help our environment, but also potentially give them experience and skill sets that might help them get employed. And as of May this year, they had removed over 17 tons of trash from our county streams. And they're also now controlling invasive species mostly on county land as part of stormwater projects and other projects. And then some other things we do is I mentioned in the slide previously that there are over 6,000 stormwater facilities in the county. It's actually closer to 7,000, I think now, or 6,500. And a significant percentage of those are privately maintained. So the county has to inspect them once every 5 years, make sure they're functioning properly. And then if they're not, they issue a corrective action notice so that the owners are responsible for doing it. So a lot of those are maintained by private contractors. So we provide training to those contractors, and we have these fact sheets which allow them to better understand what's is required to maintain the facility. Another thing that for all residents is that we do have a service request, both a number and a web page, where if there's an issue that you see, you can enter that service request and you can find out, you can report it to us. We'll send our staff out to take a look at it. We'll try to take corrective action. We also have places to tell you how to get in contact with VDOT if it's more of a problem with a road right of way. This is actually a current stormwater basin along Route 1 further down towards Fort Belvoir. This is what's been done over the last number of years, where they were often considered public safety concerns with rising water within basins. And I think the key is that we're going to try to get away from this type of facility in the new quarter redevelopment, where we have attractive stormwater features that may flood, but they'll also provide amenities to the public, and we'll keep the fences down. And then this is an example of a type of facility that will hopefully be introduced as part of the Richmond Highway redevelopment. And I think what's really interesting about this is it gives us an opportunity not only to have a space the public can come into, but functionally from a stormwater area, these could function as pocket wetlands and or floodplains. So they actually can flood outward and allow those storm flows to basically expand and slow down, get that water back in the soils and available for vegetation.
Yeah, so Charles, let me add to some of this. This is a very interesting project. So when we started getting involved in the VDOT and county's widening project that's underway right now, as well as the new bus rapid transit project. And when we saw all of the stormwater facilities that were being planned, we said, boy, we have this ecological swine concept where we're saying we want to take existing stormwater facilities and turn them into community amenities while having better environmental functions. Could we not do the same for these stormwater ponds? And if you just flip back to the previous picture for a second, we looked at, Are you all hearing me still?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Could you flip back to the previous photo? Because, you know, what we were afraid of was getting something like this, which really is not a community amenity. It's this fenced-in detention ditch that, frankly, is just filled with weeds. It's filled with trash. It just says, screams, you know, stay away, and it almost is a source of blight at this point. And this is all the way down at Accotank across from Fort Belvoir. So you can now go forward. And so when you see this graphic example in this plan, in the bioretention facility that's being proposed, I'm going to slide forward one slide. You know, we get rid of the fencing. We open it up so that people could walk around there. Maybe at certain points near BRT stations, if there's one of these ponds, we have like a small plaza that gives somebody a resting point along the highway. We have educational signage, lighting. We turn these into amenities while also looking at working with our stormwater engineers and saying, you know, we understand issues of erosion. What can we do to, you know, do things like increase the lengths of outfalls, create things like step pools to slow water as it's entering into these drainage areas, and reforest areas where normally you could see, like in those Accotank ponds, they're just grassed areas, but you know, adding lots more trees and reforesting is an important aspect of this. So we're actively working on this right now. The other important aspect of this is when we started this whole project, there was a big question about, and maybe go forward to the next slide as I talk about the question of maintenance, because VDOT's issue was, you know, okay, sure, you know, these we can do this, but who's going to maintain it? And so what we're in the process right now is to say, is work with VDOT and developing a maintenance agreement that says the county will take over maintenance responsibility if you go ahead and do all of these enhancements. So the next slide was showcasing where one of these ponds would be located. So you can envision, right, and that's a perspective view of that pond from the highway and how it could be transformed. So there's two different types of ponds in the Richmond Highway Corridor. I call them ponds, but they're all stormwater facilities. One is a bioretention that doesn't hold water typically. It will collect the water and then drain away, usually, I believe, Charles, you can correct me, a couple days typically, if not sooner. Maybe a day, rain like today, it might be take a little bit more time. And then the next slide. So this example of a wet pond, there's only a couple of these as part of the VDOT project. They're more substantial usually in size, and they treat for both quantity and quality, where bioretention, I believe, focuses more on the quality piece. But here you can see elements, again, this sort of natural shape, which those Accoting ponds they don't have. They're just big rectangles. Things like gabion walls to sort of hold back parts of land and create different types of aquatic habitats around them. And then these trails and other features that really help to build a sense of place that we're talking a lot about. And then this is one of those locations of the wet ponds and what it might look like. Could be really cool. And I think that's neat that the ecological spines, you know, sort of spearheaded these other types of initiatives and created these inspirations.
Excellent. Thanks so much for all the walkthroughs, JoAnne and Charles and Sonia. It's really fantastic. Before we dive into Q&A, I just wanted to give Louis Ackerman, who showed up in the meantime. I'm sorry for the link trouble. That was my fault. But Louis from United Communities is here. And I just wanted to give him a few minutes to say some words about United Community.
Thanks, Renee. My name is Louis Ackerman. I'm the community organizer out at United Community, and I'm always really excited to get involved in these ANS events. And I want to thank you to all of our speakers as well. This is always such great information, and it's always stuff that is very pertinent to the people that are living in the area we like to serve. United Community works with the county in an initiative called Opportunity Neighborhood, where we are working to lift the voices of the community members out in these communities that really don't have a voice right now. And you know, so far we've had a lot of success in reaching out about this, the BRT expansion and the reworking of Route 1, and Renee and ANS has been a great partner for our engagement team in the area. And we look forward to much more positive change to come to the Route 1 corridor.
Thanks so much, Louis. I appreciate it. I'm going to hand it over to Eliza for our Q&A part. So hopefully you've all been able to drop in your questions in the Q&A. I see there's a few there, and a few have gotten answered in the meantime. So I think you all are able to see the typed answers. But as you have more questions, please just put them there. Take it away, Eliza.
Thank you, first of all, to all of our great panelists. Can you all see me? I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Oh, good. There we go. So first of all, please stay for the Q&A. And if anybody is tempted to leave, please give us a few more minutes, and we're going to drop an evaluation form into the chat window before you go. But we also have some really great questions, and you are welcome to submit more. So I'm going to start by just briefly running through some of the questions that have already been answered. We had a question from Christine McGee. When restoring the RPA, the resource protected area, do you try to remove invasives from the stream valley? And Charles answered, yes. Controlling invasive species and focusing on native plantings is a really important part of restoring RPAs. A couple questions about the Bandalong trash trap. It's checked once a week or after every significant storm, and it seems to be very efficient. It's with the frequent emptying, it seems to have the potential to capture almost all the trash that flows to it. So it's a really neat object there. And I know Senator Serval worked really hard on getting that Bandalong installed. Another question is, who's responsible for maintenance and how does maintenance work? And Charles was able to answer that most maintenance falls to the Fairfax County Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. There's regular checks for trash and seasonal work to treat and remove invasives and weeds as much as necessary. So those are some of the questions that have already been answered, and thank you to our panelists for getting started with that. And I think a really interesting question that I wanted to start us with is some questions about the interactions of public and private land. So Christine asked a question, do developers provide input before they start their projects? And called out specifically a parcel at the intersection of Lockheed and Dart, which was undeveloped, but now all the trees have been cut down. And Colt Gregory asked a question that I think is related, which is privately owned public space being considered to obtain additional green space, say in exchange for density? So I want to wrap those into a broader question that any of you can talk about. How do these plans work with the private sector and private landowners? How do they interact with kind of what we all would love to see as this great future vision?
Yeah, let me start with that, if you don't mind. This is JoAnne. All of these plans in Embark are really dependent on property owners and developers to help realize. You know, we don't actively go in and do these big redevelopment projects ourselves. Now, in the case of the project that somebody mentioned at Lockheed, I believe that is North Hill development that's taking place. And that actually is a county-led effort for mixed income housing on a former Park Authority property, which then created a residential development and new park space. But in all of these projects, there is opportunity for both the developers typically will start by bringing their plans, but then the communities have many opportunities to react to those plans. So it's a sort of back and forth process when you're undergoing some sort of zoning change. And so let's say a developer were near that, the Mount Vernon Shopping Center were to come in and say, we want to redevelop in accordance with the Embark plan. Here's our concept. And we would say, okay, have you considered all of these elements related to, do you have a portion of the ecological spine that you can realize? How are you improving the stormwater conditions that exist out there today? There's a lot of expectations in the plan for new stormwater. And then related to the park question, that would be another expectation. You know, how are you, what types of open spaces are you going to provide both for the residents or the people who might be employees of the businesses on that property, but then also for the greater community. So what kind of publicly accessible park spaces are you providing on site? And those are all part of the expectations of developing along this corridor and as described in the Embark plan.
I'll also join in there by saying at the end of this Q&A, we'll have a few more slides about what you can do to get involved in these things. And oftentimes these projects go through rezonings or other areas that have public processes attached to them. And that's a great time to get involved and to speak up for what you think might be able to make a project even better. So we'll talk about that at the end.
Okay, let me feed another question. And I'll let Senator Serval, who I highlighted as being really, really key on getting the trash taken care of in this area. And he's talked about spillage from dumpsters near the storm drains. And he's asked the county to adopt an ordinance prohibiting dumpsters within 50 feet of a storm drain, but they pulled back after business objections. Is anyone aware of any other jurisdictions that do that? And I know that you all primarily do work in this jurisdiction, so I don't know if you know the answer more broadly, but I thought we could actually even throw that open to any other attendees to answer in the chat box as well. Anyone have ideas on these dumpsters? If we hear of any, we will let you know, Senator Serval. Okay. We have another question from Catherine Ward about how the highway is in need of revitalization. How will the county address redevelopment of IDAs and the Chesapeake Bay Act? If I was to interpret that in a way that makes sense to me, and Catherine, feel free to correct in the chat box if I get this wrong. You know, those grandfathered projects, basically the projects that are currently in the floodplain but would not be under today's regulations, if they redevelop, how will they be handled? Is that what you meant, Catherine? But regardless, feel free to answer that question, panelists.
Charles, do you want me to? I'll start from a broad perspective, but Charles has much more greater insight in the Chesapeake Bay ordinance. But I think this is really part of the I think, I don't want to say brilliance, that's too strong of a term, but the special thing about the ecological spines, because it recognizes that these are already intensely developed areas with large areas of impervious surface. And so the idea here is to balance that desire for this wider buffer with redevelopment, saying it's just not realistic that we're going to be able to restore this full buffer, because you realize there's just no developable land left once you're done. So what can we do in exchange for that? And that is why, you know, creating these more, restoring some aspects of these ecological spines and these corridors, you know, improves the environmental conditions without expecting that full buffer.
And I think that to add to that, there's actually relates very closely to a question Nick Reinhardt asked, which also was answered in the Q&A, and it has to do with the difference between, in the Chesapeake Bay ordinance, is it addresses much more so buffers. It's the resource protection areas, as where the floodplain ordinance looks at the floodplain issue, which is the floodable space. And so the difference in addressing it and kind of building on to what JoAnne said is that wherever possible, if nothing's been built in that area, the goal would be to not make permanent any changes that have been made to the floodplain. So for instance, filling of floodplains is problematic because it displaces floodwater and causes downstream problems and doesn't allow that water to spread out and slow down. So from a floodplain perspective, we want to try to prevent those floodplains from being made permanently filled if there's nothing built on there. At the same time, it'd be wonderful where people have built things in the past, as JoAnne said, to get as much as we can back as they redevelop. So to open that area back up, get some floodable area as a floodplain, but also create these buffers as resource protection areas to the greatest extent possible, while balancing that with the uses that are necessary to make that a useful property. So we try to get as much as we can for areas that have previously been developed, but for areas that have maybe been filled or altered but not developed, we try not to make those encroachments permanent, but keep at least what's there now functional.
And maybe I would just add to Nick's comment, because I didn't get into it, but one of the implementation challenges that came up when we were doing more research about how these ecological spines would work from a policy standpoint is that if you had a daylighted stream and then you open that stream up and created one of these ecological spines, which creates all of these new environmental benefits, does that now create new RPA? Well, in concept, yes, it would create new RPA, resource protection area, but wouldn't that be then a disincentive to developers to actually do that work? And so these are the kind of questions that we need to have handled before developers come in, so that they have a clear path to understanding how they can redevelop and how we can get these new assets. So in that case, the Chesapeake Bay ordinance does offer the opportunity for counties, for municipalities to decide whether or not to designate new daylighted streams as RPA. But these are things that we need to investigate further of how our board would handle those kinds of decisions.
Great. Thank you. So that was a comprehensive question. Oh, I'm sorry. Charles, did you want to add anything to that? The question of how will past development affect the future?
Not at this time.
Okay. And we have a question about time frame. When will this vision come into fruition?
Oh, that's such a good question. I wish I knew the answer. I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I think every time I talk about Embark, somebody asks that, because you know, we really want to see some of this start to get realized. And it's all dependent on property owners coming forward and saying, we see this vision of the plan and we want to redevelop. We are already seeing new development coming in. Some of it was part of the old plan prior to Embark, but if you've driven down the corridor recently, you've seen Novus, which is up by the Walmart in Pendaw, that has broken ground. You have South Alex, which had the unfortunate fire and is now being rebuilt. You have North Hill starting, as someone mentioned. And all of these are developments that are, whether they were done before or after Embark, they are in keeping with the concept of Embark, with new stormwater controls and greater use of the land. You know, whether even if it might have the same amount of impervious, you're getting much more use out of that land by going multi-story, by hiding the parking and putting it in parking garages rather than just having these big asphalt parking lots. And so, you know, little by little is getting realized. I think we're very excited to try to get an ecological spine implemented. The county is actively looking for projects where we can test out some of these ideas and even do a demonstration project. So I envision in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll really start to see some of these projects come to life.
And the vision for the whole Route 1 corridor redevelopment is a longer scale redevelopment with the bus rapid transit coming in Route 1 and such. And so this is really looking at the long-term 10-year plus for some of those bigger developments, not all of the eco-spines that we're talking about today, but some of the really big redevelopment opportunities.
Right, that's a good point. And just so everybody knows the timeline. So for the VDOT widening project, that is slated to be completed now into about 2028, 2029, and the BRT in that same sort of time frame, the first phase of it. And I think I heard a mention from Senator Serval about the Yellow Line extension. So in addition to BRT, there is a plan for 2 additional Metro Rail stops along this corridor. So an extension of the Yellow Line from the Huntington Station to Beacon Groveton and Hybla Valley. But that could be a very long ways off. So maybe let's get the BRT in place and see how that goes and see how development happens around those first.
Yeah. So the last thing I think is just, I wonder if we want to talk a little bit about what you all personally see as next steps. So really that's what I'm saying is questions are over. I'm not seeing any more questions. So I'm going to segue into what I know is your wrap up. And I'll be logging myself off here and remind everyone to please fill out our evaluation before you leave. I've put that in the chat window already, and I'm going to put it in again. So back over to our panelists.
Fantastic. Thanks, Eliza, for taking us to the Q&A. There's lots of opportunity for redevelopment. So what can you do in Fairfax County to get us there for these ecological spine concepts, for things that are better for the environment, better for the community, better for a healthy community, holistically speaking? Maybe you don't live in Fairfax County, maybe you live somewhere else. All these same things can apply. You just need to figure out the channels that are most effective for you. So in Fairfax County, we have supervisors and districts. And so how do you stay engaged? That can be one of the hardest problems, to try to find out where there are things to actually get involved in. Subscribe to your supervisor's newsletter. Find out what they're talking about. Stay in touch with local advocacy groups like the Coalition for Smarter Growth, Audubon Naturalist Society, United Community. We have a lot of other, in this direct area, we have Friends of Little Hunting Creek. We have Friends of Dyke Marsh, Friends of Huntley Meadows. All of those are the watersheds and water spaces around this Route 1 corridor. So they also will have opportunities to get involved. Join community events like this, like other walks, like cleanups, just things that you can get out and meet people and find out about the issues that are being discussed. Work with your local elected representatives. Participate actively in your HOA if you live in a community that has kind of larger community power. Oftentimes when there's a redevelopment or rezoning, if you live in an HOA that's near there, your voice can carry a lot of weight. So to help your HOA be able to speak up as well, not to mention just doing ecological projects in your homeowners association too. And get involved with the land use committee of your district. See if you have that. And if your own locale has something similar to that, find out what that is. And then really use your voice to speak up. So ask questions in community meetings, help get yourself educated, write comment letters when there's an opportunity to do so in a public process. You can testify at public hearings. That's one of the scariest things that I ever learned to do. And then when I did it, I actually found out it wasn't that scary, but you do have to get educated on the topics that you're speaking about. So these kinds of meetings can really help you get there. And then as you're thinking about things that go to public hearings and then have decisions by your board of supervisors or whatever your ruling district, ruling locale structure is, look at how people are voting and know what you want them to vote as, and then speak up, write back to them, tell them how you feel, whether it's good or not good. They want to hear positive feedback as well. And you can always write letters to the editor as well, but really be an active participant in these. And then track and engage on development projects. This is so hard to do, and organizations like Coalition for Smarter Growth and ANS can help you do that and can help give our perspectives on what we think about the development. For this particular area, stay educated on VDOT road widening, the related projects like the bus rapid transit, the BRT. You can track things with the Planning Commission or Board of Supervisors, including committee meetings. All of that information is listed on the Fairfax County website, so you can go see agendas ahead of time and see what they're going to be talking about. And like I mentioned earlier, rezoning always presents a great opportunity to get community engagement. So think about where there might be something like that you can make a project even better. Bird-safe windows, green infrastructure as part of the redevelopment, things like that. And then understand the plan potential that that has and really make that vision that you have for that plan potential be heard, and communicate all of those ideas to those decision makers. It's a lot of text on the screen, but we'll be sharing these slides with you, so don't worry if you haven't written them all down, it's no problem. And then these are just a list of resources for some of the things we talked about. Again, I'm just going to go really quick through them because you'll have them later as a PDF. But I really wanted to make sure that you have all of our contact information in case you have any follow-up questions. So that's the wrap up for today for our presentation. And again, I want to thank JoAnne and Charles for talking us through all these things, and for Coalition for Smarter Growth for helping to be a co-sponsor and talking us through some of the slides as well, and for Louis Ackerman as well with United Communities for being one of our co-sponsors as well. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, Renee.
Thanks, everybody.
And please remember to fill out our evaluation before you go. Thank you all.
Thanks, Eliza. That'll be coming out via email as well, so we'll make sure we have the link in the follow-up too.